Have you ever noticed how everyone looks to a winner for advice? I mean, everyone wants to be a winner, so it makes sense, right? Everyone wants to know what are their secrets, how did they do it, how did they prepare, what books did they read, what training did they have, what's that special formula that they used to make them a winner? This weekend, I participated in the event of a lifetime. I was on the Toastmasters world stage in the Bahamas as a contestant in the World Championship of Public Speaking. In order to make it there, I had to compete in my club and win. I had to compete in my area and win. I had to compete in my division and win. I had to compete in the district and win. I had to compete in the regionals and win. And I had to compete in the semifinals and win. With all of those wins, I let one loss overshadow them. I hate to say it, but the lessons that I got didn't start to pour in until the winner of the final contest was announced. And I learned not only did I not come in first, but I didn't even place. There were over 35,000 people from over 100 countries who competed in that contest just to try to make it to where I had the honor to be on that stage. But I allowed my accomplishments to be overshadowed by one loss, and I shouldn't have. So why would you want to take tips from someone who lost? Because in life, we are all going to lose a lot more often than we are going to win. And the mistakes that we make from not adequately handling a loss can be a lot more detrimental than how we handle a win. So it stands to reason that it's important to know how to deal with those losses. And I have 5 tips I want to share with you on how to handle losing. Tip number 5, lose with grace and dignity. During the competition, after all of the speeches in the contest had been delivered and we were all sitting there anxiously awaiting the results, they called 3rd place, they called 2nd place, and they called 1st place. And all the winners took their place on the stage, and I and 4 others were left sitting in our chairs. I got up and I slowly walked over to my husband with my head drooping. I put my head on his shoulder and I said, "Get me out of here." He whispered in my ear, "Grace and dignity." I wasn't trying to hear it. I wanted to leave. However, people were coming up to congratulate me, and all I could think was, why are you congratulating me? I just lost. I wanted to leave because it was taking everything in me to fight back tears. I had that frog in my throat. I was sure people could see it. I could barely speak, and my smile was fake. But people were coming up wanting to take pictures, and the last thing I wanted was that moment immortalized. And then that night there was an event, the last event of the convention, and I didn't want to go. But my husband again was like, grace and dignity. He wanted me to make sure I congratulated the winner. So I decided to attend. And Jocelyn, the winner, found me sitting at my table, and when we made eye contact, I went over and I hugged her. There was no envy, no jealousy. I was really happy for her. I mean, she earned that win. And I told her congratulations, and that was from the heart. And she told me that I inspired her. When you lose with grace and dignity, you open yourself up to the experiences that happen after the sting of a loss. And there's so much to be gained when you don't run and hide from the pain of defeat. Tip number 4, know that you did your best. It's one thing to be upset about losing if you know you didn't give it your all. But when you know that you did, then you really have nothing to be ashamed or embarrassed about. And that's how I felt at first, embarrassed. I was thinking my whole family, all of my friends, those who believed in me, my district, everyone, just saw me lose. They just saw that my best wasn't even good enough to place. No, actually what they saw was how far my current best brought me. What they saw was what I have to improve upon. And we all have that. Wherever your best is at this very moment, know it can and will get better. Tip number 3, let others in. And this might be really hard to do for some. When I lost, I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to hear anyone. I didn't want to hear people congratulate me on how far I did make it. And I certainly didn't want to hear, "You'll get it next year." My husband told me that he saw people trying to get my attention, trying to talk to me. And if you were one of those people and I didn't notice you, please know it wasn't on purpose. I truly do appreciate every single person who attempted to cheer me up, because now that I've had a couple of days to let things sink in, I realized that had it not been for those who told me they believed in me, even with that outcome, I think I would have felt even worse than I did. And I won't lie though, For every positive message I heard, I did have a sarcastic comeback in my head. People said, "You did great." And I may have said out loud, "Thank you." But what I really said in my head was, obviously I didn't do great. One person even came over to me to ask me if I would be his mentor. And I told him yes, but in my head I'm thinking, I just lost, right? Here's the thing about letting others in. Sometimes people see in you the things that you can't see in yourself, especially when you're disappointed. It's easy to hear people say you did great when you have a trophy in your hands to validate it, but it's even more important to hear people say you did great when you don't have that trophy. And I'm almost ashamed to admit it, but right after the loss, the daughter of one of the other contestants, who was also left sitting in that chair beside me, came over to me. She had to have been only 5 or 6 years old. Her mother had just given a speech about turning lemons into lemonade, and baby girl came over to me and told me that I did great, and then handed me a cup of lemonade. Her mother was in the same boat as me, but that sweet little girl made it a point to come over and make sure that I knew she thought I did a good job. It helps to let others in when you're hurting. Tip number 2. You only lose if you quit. After the winners were rushed backstage, there were a lot of attendees who came over to talk to me and to shake my hand and, like I said, to take pictures and congratulate me. And it was truly an honor, but I couldn't help but feel like the consolation prize. Like I wasn't the one who deserved a congratulation handshake. More than once, people said, "We can't wait to see you on stage next year." Again, that internal voice in my head said, "I'm not doing this again." And actually, I think I know I said it out loud to a couple of people. I couldn't help but to think of the money that was spent going to the Bahamas, the money on the food, the Airbnb, the car rental, the convention, this clothing I needed for the trip, and so many other incidentals. And I just felt like I had thrown away so much money, not to mention how I would have to start that whole process all over again. The anxiety of competing at each level all over again, and just the thought made me sick. And when my husband and I finally were alone back at our Airbnb, he told me that not a dime was wasted because there was no other way for me to get that experience. He told me how, even though I didn't win, from where he sat in the audience, he could see and hear how the audience responded to me. And even though the judges didn't feel I deserved to place, my message did hit home. And what was my message exactly? Ironically, it was about leaving your comfort zone. My message was about taking chances to go after your dreams. And then my husband did the lowest of the low. He used my own words of my speech against me. He told me that he would support me if I wanted to go home and leave the whole thing behind about being a speaker. But he told me he could paint the words comfort zone over the doorway of my office at home, and I could continue to work my regular 9 to 5 and never look back. Or I could continue to go after what I just proven to 1,500 people that I was meant to do. He told me the only way our money and time could possibly be wasted would be if I quit. My semifinal speech was about how we must keep going in the face of adversity, and my finals speech was about leaving our comfort zone. So I had to decide to live by my own words and believe in them. And speaking of believing, that brings me to the number 1 tip. Lean on your faith. Bright and early, the morning of the contest, the 8 final contestants met at the ballroom where we went through rehearsals. And that's where I had my first opportunity to speak with the other contestants who hadn't been in my semifinal round. Once the rehearsal was over, Jocelyn, the winner, ultimately, and I were talking, and she said something that let me know she was a Christian, so I asked her if she wanted to pray with me because I could see she was just as nervous about this as I was. She said yes, and we stepped outside into the hallway, and I led the prayer. I remembered praying and asking that no matter the outcome, that all 8 of us would be able to hold our head high, no matter what, realizing the accomplishments of just making it that far. And once we were done praying, she wiped tears from her eyes and we thanked each other. I prayed for that win no less than she did, but for God's own reasons, the win was given to her and I didn't even place. So I have a choice to make. I can be mad because God didn't answer my prayer, or I can see that God did answer my prayer, just not how I wanted. And I bet we've all had times in our lives where we didn't get what we thought we wanted, and then later we were happy things turned out as they did. And I'm sure that for me, this is one of those times. Something beautiful is going to come from this. I'm sure of it. Okay, so there you have it. Tips from a loser. And these tips apply whether you are competing in Toastmasters or whether you're just trying to do more with your life than be minimum. And I didn't win in the end, but I'm in good company with the other 34,999 people who also didn't win. And I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to keep growing, and I'm going to keep inspiring, and I'm going to keep talking to companies and encouraging their employees to do and be their best for their professional and personal lives. I will mentor. I will. No matter what, we are all going to be knocked down at some point. So there are lessons to be learned from a loser who keeps going. Please share this video with anyone you know who might need to see the bright side of a temporary setback. And Toastmasters, I'll see you on stage next year in California.